At this busy loading zone, workers try to move a top-heavy industrial unit out of a box truck. But it didn't go as planned. Use proper unloading equipment when handling heavy, unpalletized machinery from an elevated transport vehicle. At a loading dock, a worker carries a tall stack of heavy rice bags down wooden stairs. The unstable load shifts, causing him to lose stable footing. Carry only manageable loads on stairways, and do not let pride or haste replace safe lifting practice. Stairways demand balance, visibility, and controlled footing, all of which are reduced when a worker is overloaded. A shifting stack held too high or too heavy can block sight lines, strain the spine and legs, and make it very difficult to regain balance if the carrier stumbles or loses strength. Supervisors should require the use of hand trucks, carts, conveyors, or team handling methods for bulk movement, especially on stairs or uneven surfaces. If manual lifting is unavoidable, workers should carry one manageable load at a time and keep it close to the body. At a weighbridge, a driver climbs onto a loaded trailer to pull a tarp across the top. During the process, he loses footing on the uneven surface. Handle load tarping from protected systems at ground level, or use proper fall protection whenever the task involves working above a trailer. Elevated trailer surfaces and uneven cargo create an unstable footing environment, and manual tarping from the top introduces a serious balance and fall hazard with very little warning. Always use ground-level tarping systems, fall protection harnesses, or elevated safety gantries. The top of a loaded trailer offers very little stability, and one misstep can result in a serious elevated workplace risk event. Saving a few minutes is never worth taking that risk. At a loading zone, a motorcyclist moves into the swing radius of a truck-mounted crane. The grapple descends at the same moment. Do not walk or ride into the active loading radius of heavy equipment without first making direct eye contact with the operator. Entering the active equipment zone within the boom area places you too close to active equipment movement. Install high visibility barricades around loading zones to stop unauthorized entry into the machine's operating footprint. Operators lose sight of the ground directly below a descending boom, so anyone in that blind spot can be contacted. Without warning, trying to slip past an active loading arm is a dangerous shortcut around a machine capable of creating serious contact risk. Inside this warehouse, a worker sorts packages beside a conveyor belt. Then a reversing truck suddenly backs into the loading area behind him. Face active loading traffic and require a designated spotter whenever a truck reverses into a blind workspace. Large commercial vehicles have blind spots that can completely hide a person from view. Loading zones should have strict pedestrian boundaries and truck. Movement should be guided by trained spotters who remain visible to the driver at all times. Workers on foot must maintain constant situational awareness and avoid standing between vehicles and fixed structures. Mirrors and backup alarms are not enough on their own. In an industrial alley, a cargo trike drives through a hidden water-filled pothole. The sudden drop puts the heavy load off balance instantly. Never drive an overloaded or poorly balanced cargo vehicle through standing water or over unverified ground. This creates a serious stability and load shift hazard, especially for lightweight vehicles that depend on balanced weight distribution for steering control. Transport crews should place heavy loads as low and as far forward as possible to maintain traction and steering stability. Drivers should avoid puddles and flooded paths, since hidden holes or depressions can trap a wheel and suddenly shift the vehicle's balance. Poor load placement combined with uneven ground can quickly lead to loss of stability or load shift. In an industrial yard, a worker walks backward on a flatbed truck without checking behind him. One misstep takes him outside the safe walking area. Stay forward-facing when working near the edge of an elevated flatbed, loading deck, or truck bed, and maintain continuous awareness of your position. Loss of footing incidents at height often happen during ordinary movement, not dramatic mistakes. Workers on elevated surfaces should stay forward-facing whenever possible and keep the platform edge in view. Materials, tools, and foot traffic should be arranged so people do not need to back into blind areas. A safe working position is usually toward the center of the deck, away from open edges. At a construction site, workers guide large steel arches near an unsecured scaffold. One unexpected shift causes the scaffold structure to move out of position at once. Clear personnel from temporary scaffolding and secure the surrounding work zone before moving large structural materials anywhere nearby. Unbraced scaffolds offer minimal resistance against shifting steel, so even slight contact or transferred movement can quickly turn a manageable lift into a major stability failure involving both the structure and anyone positioned on it. Always clear the restricted work zone and ensure all workers are safely on the ground before shifting massive architectural components around a site. Scaffolding must be thoroughly secured and positioned completely outside the restricted movement path of heavy materials. At a busy warehouse loading dock, a distracted worker steps into an active forklift lane. The machine continues into the travel path before he can clear the area safely. Move through live industrial traffic zones only with clear forward visibility and constant situational awareness. Walking backward or failing to scan your surroundings near forklifts can turn an ordinary walkway into a high-risk area. Stay within marked pedestrian paths and make direct eye contact with machinery operators before crossing. On this roadside, a crew uses a truck-mounted crane to raise a concrete utility pole. As the pole swings up, the boom moves too close to overhead power lines. Maintain the required clearance distance whenever crane booms. Aerial lifts or conductive rigging are used near energized overhead power lines. Direct contact is not even necessary for a serious electrical hazard. Electricity can bridge a gap when equipment gets too close. Before any lift begins, operators and supervisors should perform a full site survey and identify all overhead electrical hazards. Every line should be treated as energized until the utility confirms otherwise. A dedicated spotter should be assigned to monitor distance because the equipment operator cannot safely manage every hazard alone. Inside an auto shop, a mechanic sweeps in front of a parked car. The moment the vehicle moves forward, the broom handle snaps upward unexpectedly. Never move a vehicle inside a workshop without first clearing the area, and never sweep directly in the blind spot of an occupied car with the engine running. A tire catching a broom can instantly turn the handle into an unexpected moving hazard. Drivers should confirm that the path is clear and warn nearby workers before shifting out of park. Shop personnel should treat any occupied vehicle as active equipment and avoid standing directly in front of or behind it while cleaning. At an active loading yard, a worker stands between a truck and a pile of loose soil. Suddenly, the unstable dirt shifts forward into the narrow gap. Keep yourself out of pinch points between a stationary vehicle and an unsupported mound of soil, debris, or heavy equipment. Loose material can shift suddenly, even when it appears still, and that movement can pin a worker against nearby equipment almost immediately. Site supervisors should establish exclusion zones so workers do not enter pinch points between vehicles in unstable loads. Tasks should be planned with clear access and exit paths, especially around trucks, loader buckets, or spoil piles. Inside a workshop, a technician inspects an energized electrical component near an open bay. During the inspection, an electrical discharge occurs at the connection. Fully de-energize, isolate, and verify electrical systems before inspecting or servicing exposed connections. Live electrical equipment can fail or discharge without warning, turning an ordinary inspection into a serious electrical exposure event in far less time than a person can recognize the danger and react safely. Always lock out and tag out the power source before working near open electrical components. Electrical failures can develop faster than a person can respond. On a narrow commercial street, an overloaded truck contacts an overhead hazard. The impact causes its cargo to begin to produce heat and smoke under unstable conditions. Do not attempt to manually offload or dismantle heated synthetic cargo to save a vehicle. Materials like expanded polystyrene can soften, collapse, and spread as unstable softened material that can increase risk for anyone nearby. When a heat and smoke incident involving foam or chemical-based cargo escalates, evacuation must come before property protection. Proper route planning and clearance awareness are the first defenses against this kind of incident onset. Once the load is compromised, any attempt to intervene exposes workers to heavy smoke conditions, unstable surroundings, and rapidly worsening hazardous conditions. On this rooftop, a crew cuts a massive tree branch while one worker stands below with a guide rope. The moment the timber separates, it moves downward unpredictably. Keep everyone outside the immediate drop zone during active tree felling or branch cutting operations. Tree limbs rarely fall in a clean, predictable path. They can twist, rebound, or swing as the cut completes, turning a routine yard or site work into a major struck-by hazard. Tree crews should establish a wide exclusion zone and keep all ground personnel outside the maximum reach of the limb or trunk being cut. Large sections should be rigged and lowered in a controlled manner using tension lines and secure anchor points. On an elevated platform, a worker steadies a swinging steel coil by hand. The heavy load suddenly shifts off-center and swings unexpectedly. Never stand in the swing path of a suspended, very heavy load, and never try to overpower shifting industrial freight by hand. Even at low speed, a steel coil can develop enough momentum to become a difficult-to-control pendulum. Rigging crews should use long tag lines to guide heavy suspended loads from a safe distance while keeping all personnel outside the swing radius. Workers on elevated platforms should also avoid positions where they could be caught between a moving load and the platform edge. Physical strength is not a substitute for proper load control. Inside a busy auto shop, engine oil spills across the floor unnoticed. Moments later, someone steps into it and loses traction immediately. Remove open containers of industrial fluid from busy work areas immediately because they create an immediate slip hazard for others nearby. Oil, coolant, or similar liquids can spread quickly across smooth flooring, reducing traction and turning a normal walkway into an unsafe surface. Workers should use sealed or stable collection containers and remove them from active walking paths as soon as fluid transfer is complete. Any spill, even a small one, should be cleaned immediately with absorbent material and clearly marked until the floor is safe again. At a commercial loading dock, workers begin unloading a tall, top-heavy stack of beverage crates with a pallet jack. Then the load begins to move out of alignment. Secure loose, high-stacked cargo into a stable single unit before pulling it off a commercial vehicle with a pallet jack. The transition from truck bed to ground can rapidly shift the load's center of gravity, and an unstrapped top-heavy stack can move out of alignment almost instantly once momentum and surface changes begin affecting the pallet. Always shrink wrap or firmly band high-stacked inventory into a single solid unit before moving it with a manual pallet jack, because a pallet jack offers extremely limited lateral stability. At an extraction site, a worker handles a high-pressure hose, releasing a powerful flow. A sudden disconnection creates sudden hose movement. Never attempt to lift, reposition, or straddle a high-pressure hose while the pumping system is still energized. A sudden coupling failure can generate enough force to throw a worker off balance or pull them toward the risk area. Always shut down the pump and fully bleed line pressure before moving or adjusting heavy hoses. Inspect couplings, clamps, and locking points carefully before starting flow, and keep everyone clear of the discharge and line movement zone. Pressure-controlled systems must be treated as active hazards until fully isolated. Inside this tuning shop, mechanics push a modified car to the limit on a dynamometer. Then the engine suddenly suffers a major equipment failure. Verify engine condition and complete proper inspection before pushing any aging or untested engine to extreme high RPM loads. Under dyno conditions or other controlled high-stress testing, worn internal parts can fail suddenly, causing components or fluids to unexpectedly escape. Technicians should inspect engine integrity, confirm safe fluid pressures, and review tuning parameters before any maximum load test, especially on older vehicles. Protective barriers should separate the operator and observers from the engine bay and spinning components. Past performance on the road does not guarantee safety under artificial maximum load. At a loading dock, a worker climbs onto a truck as it suddenly reverses. The clearance between the vehicle and the platform disappears quickly. Never position yourself between a reversing flatbed truck and a fixed loading ramp. And never approach the rear of a running vehicle without direct confirmation from the driver. Blind spots behind commercial vehicles make these areas especially dangerous. Facilities should enforce pedestrian exclusion zones and require trained spotters whenever heavy vehicles are backing toward a dock. Ground personnel should make eye contact and communicate clearly with the driver before entering any loading area. The space between a moving truck and a solid ramp can close quickly and become a high-risk pinch point. At a construction site, a crane lifts a large sheet of glass using basic slings. While elevated, the unsupported panel moves out of stable alignment while suspended. Use proper lifting systems when moving large architectural glass, and keep everyone away from the restricted area around a suspended fragile load. Glass is strong in some directions and extremely vulnerable in others, especially when pressure is applied unevenly at the edges. Improper rigging can create stress points, bending, or loss of control, creating a serious risk in the surrounding work zone. In a busy yard, a forklift rounds a blind corner and enters an active traffic path without noticing an approaching vehicle. Approach blind corners at controlled speed, use warning signals early, and make sure the path is clear before entering any shared traffic area. In active yards, limited corner visibility can place forklifts and other vehicles on intersecting paths with very little time to react. Always slow down at blind corners, sound the horn in advance, and stay alert for cross traffic before proceeding. In busy work zones, corner visibility can be limited even when your forward view appears clear, so every turn into a shared route should be treated as a potential vehicle intersection hazard. At a busy materials yard, a pedestrian crosses an active forklift lane. The operator continues forward without full path awareness. Do not drive a forklift through a shared workspace without maintaining forward focus and active awareness of pedestrians. Even a straight path becomes unsafe when attention slips. Use designated pedestrian lanes and make sure workers establish eye contact with operators before crossing. Even an unloaded forklift has enough mass to create a serious equipment contact risk, so distraction is just as unsafe as an obstructed view. At this compound entrance, a worker struggles to force open a stuck sliding steel gate. Then the overhead guide rail suddenly shifts out of place above him. Treat a jammed, heavy sliding gate as a structural warning sign and inspect the overhead guide rail and support system before applying force. If a gate is binding, jumping its track, or resisting normal movement, that often signals structural damage rather than a simple obstruction. Facility. Managers should inspect guide rollers, rails, brackets, and weld points regularly for corrosion, misalignment, or fatigue. Workers should report stuck or unstable gates immediately and keep clear until the problem is evaluated. Using force on a compromised gate can pull weakened supports loose and cause a larger support system failure. Inside an active commercial service bay, mechanics work close to a fully loaded transport truck raised for maintenance. A shift in weight distribution creates a clear stability concern. Never perform maintenance on or stand beside a fully loaded, top-heavy commercial truck while it is raised on improperly secured lifting supports. When a vehicle's weight is not fully supported in the correct way, even a small shift in load, suspension, or lifting position can quickly create a major stability issue. To prevent this, crews should fully unload heavy commercial vehicles and stabilize the suspension before major lifting or axle work begins. Facilities should also use certified heavy-duty lifts or properly rated jack stands designed for the vehicle's weight. Inside this supply room, a worker climbs an unanchored shelving unit to reach the top stock. The moment his weight shifts, the entire rack becomes unstable and leans forward. Do not climb on industrial shelving or use it as a makeshift ladder, and never leave freestanding racks unanchored to the wall or floor. To prevent this, facilities must anchor all storage racks to structural supports or concrete and remove the chance of instability. Workers should use approved ladders or step stools to reach high shelves, never the shelving itself. A storage rack is not designed to act like climbing equipment. On this residential construction site, a mason works on the edge of a freshly poured cantilever slab. Then the temporary supports shift beneath him unexpectedly. Never stand, kneel, or work on a freshly poured cantilever slab or temporary formwork unless the supporting shoring has been properly engineered and verified for the full load. To prevent this, crews must use engineered cross-brace shoring beneath all suspended pours and leave it in place until the concrete reaches its required strength. In this stone yard, a forklift operator tries to unload a heavy block over the side of a truck, but the load catches, twists, and comes down beside the vehicle. Do not try to unload a bulky loose load from standard forklift tines by sharply tilting the mast forward. Forks are built to carry stable loads, not to act like a dump bucket. To prevent this, operators must use the correct attachment for loose or irregular material, such as a self-dumping hopper or rotating grab. They should never try to shake or flick a heavy load off elevated forks. Once a load leaves the tines, its path is no longer under control. To keep learning from these important workplace safety lessons, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay aware, stay safe.